Welcome to the Woman's Connection. I'm Barrie-Louise Switzen, your moderator. The Woman's Connection is a program about events shaping women's lives and helping one gain authentic power on a personal or professional level. So won't you stay tuned?
Welcome. Everybody's talking about it. It's the hottest topic around. It's hotter than sex. Everybody talks about it at cocktail parties and at the checkout counter in grocery stores. What am I talking about? I'm talking about real estate. How to invest, what to do, buy, sell. Well, with me is Lisa Vander, who's going to explain how to buy real estate and do it as an investment. And I would like to welcome Lisa.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
In your bio, you say you're a wealth developer, real estate and investment advisor, national educator, and the author of the current book, The Realist Guide to Making Millions Through Real Estate. And you're also the founder of Pacific Blue Investments. What exactly is a wealth advisor?
A wealth advisor is somebody who looks at the whole person and looks and evaluates what they currently are looking for, what money they might already have, what their age is, what their risk tolerance levels are, and then I listen intently to what their goals and objectives are, and I advise them on how to take the capital that they have available to them and strategically place it in real estate so that they can create wealth for themselves, not only today, tomorrow, but into the future.
As a realtor, I get asked, I want to buy the best bargain around.
Best bargain to buy is to recognize that you're going to be an investor for 10 to 20 years, and the best bargain is to place your money strategically in the right market with the right conditions, and then know what to do in all of the market cycles that you have. People forget that there's an upside to real estate and a downside to real estate. Wealth is developed over time as you know what to do when the market cycles down and know what to do with your capital as the market is going up. So the best bargain is getting into the game and knowing how to play the game. The wealthy are in investment real estate over time. Time is the critical element.
So you're saying invest for 10 to 20 years as your window of opportunity.
That's the standard investor. If you are somebody who's a little bit older and is getting into the game a little bit longer, they don't have as much time to invest, your strategy again is going to be a bit different than somebody who might have a 10 or 20 year period. So the person who might have a 5-year window, they actually have to invest a bit more aggressively, and I'd want to make sure that they're aware of what the risks are and what they need to do to invest in that short period of time.
Well, let's step back a minute. How did you get involved in real estate in the first place?
Well, I grew up in a family of very powerful women. My grandmother in the 1930s and the 40s was the CEO of a chemical company in Chicago, Illinois. So I grew up in a family of very, very dynamic businesswomen. And from a very young age, I was taught how to think from a business level. What is it that you want to do? What are you strategizing? My mother then, with 6 children, ended up as a single mother, and she got into real estate and did fabulously and began to buy properties and invest, coming from a family of very powerful and dynamic women. Then right out of graduate school, coming from that background, I decided, putting my husband through his doctoral program, that I too, with 2 small kids under my feet, would begin to buy property and invest in real estate. And once I got it into my blood, couldn't get it out. And that was in 1989. So I've been really involved in real estate since 1989.
So how did you go from buying your own portfolio to starting to advise people?
Well, like I said, you've got to have time in the market to allow for errors and mistakes. I got in 1989, which was at the very peak of the market in San Diego, and I didn't know any better to pay attention to both sides of the cycle. So when I got in, I ended up watching the market tumble down, and I decided to sell those properties. And slowly over time, I watched my friends who had been in the market a little longer than I had and had a little bit more capital, what they were able to do to ride out that storm. And then I became a real estate agent in 1993 and began to continue talking to people about how they should invest in real estate. But at the time, everybody was putting their capital and their money into the stock market. But I kept saying, no, I really believe real estate's a win. In 2000, after the stock market crashed, everybody started coming to me, and they were listening because now they had something at risk. They knew that they didn't want to continue to put their capital in the stock market. They knew that I'd been talking about this, and it's been an amazing ride ever since. Continuing to talk about how people can do what the wealthy have done, which is stay in over time, be aware of the pitfalls. It's not as easy as some of the infomercials say that all you have to do is buy property. Buying property is one of the elements. You've got to learn how to keep the property, manage the property, stay in the game, and know how to move your capital around. Most people want safety and security today. They want to know that the money that they put into their portfolio today will be there tomorrow and will be there in the future, 5, 10, 15 years out. That's what I really teach people to do.
Going back a second, at the beginning you said something about learning the tips and the hints that the people who had been in the market had been in for a while. What kind of tips did they give you?
Well, one of the things that I kept witnessing was that the wealthy didn't always sell when the market began to go on a downturn.
Then how did they keep the property in their hands?
That's the critical issue, right? That's the question, is how do you keep the property in your hands in a downturn market? You do that long before the market begins to turn down. When I work with a client now and they're about ready to buy a property, I make sure that they understand that the market will cycle, that there will be a reduction in pricing or value, that there will be a tightening up and a shrinking of the rental values or an increase in the vacancies. And then I work with the client to say, how can we structure this property by the way that we put in the financing? How can we help you do what I call sustain during the downward cycle? Sustain is the name of the game when the market cycles down. The wealthy knew that. They knew how to pay attention not to value, which is where fear comes in and they want to sell the property, but how to pay attention to the rents and to the tax benefits that will help you emotionally stay in the game when it looks like the values are plummeting.
You wrote a book called Making Millions Through Real Estate. The subtitle is what I really like.
Yes.
Start your own portfolio with as little as $3,000. Why that amount?
Well, it's a really easy number for people to say, if I don't have any money at all, I'm still not out of the game. And what that means is that you could either take that on a credit card, you could take that somewhere, borrow it from family members, borrow it from a brother or sister or some coworker or somebody who wants to go in partnerships with you. It's really to say, if you have the dream and you have the vision, it's not out of your reach. Now, most of the clients that I actually work with have some money to invest. Most Americans have a brother, a sister, a family member. There's a lot of capital and a lot of equity out in the marketplace. That subtitle is to include everybody. Don't let your own fears, don't let your hesitation to get involved to stop you from creating financial security for yourself and for your family.
Talking about the psychology of fear.
Mm-hmm.
How does somebody overcome the psychology of fear? What kind of steps do you recommend them doing to get off the dime? They analyze the product, they analyze and they analyze.
You're identifying one of the things that I call the analysis paralysis, or for women specifically, the fear of not having someone to do it with, or the fear of how am I going to be able to work with two different components, is the need for security and the need to make an investment. One of the things that I really work with people on is we all experience fear. I've been doing this since 1989. I absolutely, every single time that I buy a property, I'm frightened, I'm scared, and sometimes my brain turns off. And you know what I do? I do it anyways. And what I do is I make sure that I have a team of people that are more vested in me being successful and helping me to accomplish the goals that I want than my own mind or my own hesitations of what I can do for myself. Building a team around you, having a foundation of understanding. The book that I wrote is a foundation of not only the theories that you need to know, but the how-to. It's got all kinds of worksheets and forms, and then we have all kinds of other support systems that help you to create what you want. So getting a team of people around you to make it work is absolutely critical.
So who would be on this team?
You would want a real estate agent that understands the investment side of real estate. If you go to a real estate agent that only understands a particular property or how to market that property or how to evaluate the value of it, but doesn't understand the internal workings of that investment, you're not having the right team player on your team to get you to success. You also want to have a good person who understands the mortgages and not just a lender who wants to get you a loan, but what I call a mortgage planner. That's somebody who recognizes that you have a different intention. You're buying that property so that you can create a profit for yourself, and that, like what you mentioned in the very beginning, is being able to sustain it means that you have to have the loan on that property that matches the intention of why you're holding it. I.e., if you're buying a property in Manhattan, you're not going to be able to cash flow it, and you certainly won't be doing that with $3,000. But you could buy a property in another state that you could use that $3,000 to purchase that property, and you could buy and put some lending and financing on it that would help you maintain and keep that property.
Going out of state to buy something, what do you recommend? I mean, do you recommend going to see it before you buy it, or buying it blind based on somebody else's specs?
Well, I think that the first thing that I really promote, and you're going to hear me saying over and over, is you want to have a plan first. So often people want to jump towards spending their capital before they even know where they're going. Meaning, have you evaluated what your capital resources are? Like, how much money do I actually have to spend? How much money am I willing to put into this investment? What is my objective in that investment? Are you planning on going ahead and putting $100,000 in, $200,000, $300,000 in? And so once you've got an idea of how much money you're going to have to put in there, and then what's the rate of return that you're going to be getting on that property?
What is the average rate of return somebody should be looking for when they buy a property?
For most of my clients, we're looking at 25 to 30% rate of return on the equity that they have. But I want the listeners to know what that includes. That includes appreciation, cash flow, tax benefits, and loan reduction. That the investor, I want them to recognize it's not just value or appreciation. It's not just cash flow. It's making sure that you know what the wealthy know. What impact will the taxes have on me? Every American citizen has $25,000 worth of tax benefit that they have a right to claim every year against their passive income or active income if they make less than $100,000 AGI. And most people don't recognize that the only way you can get that tax benefit is if you own investment property. So the whole key is the more investment property you own, the more taxable benefits you're able to use, and it should be equated as a benefit for you and a way for you to be able to afford that property that you might be hesitant to go ahead and put into your portfolio. The wealthy know this, the wealthy calculate it, the wealthy understand those numbers so that they can hold on and stay in the game when they might have a beginner might be hesitant and jump out because the market has dropped or the cash flow is a little bit tightened. If you don't look at loan reduction and you don't look at tax benefits, you may make a premature judgment on that investment and not really get what you are able to get in that investment.
Okay, now in your book you said that you have a software program that you can download from your website.
Yes.
And everything else that we can play
Yes.
around with. So you're talking about capital appreciation when you're in there, the rate of return, how much you put down, the mortgage, the taxes,
Yes.
the entire picture when you decide, okay, so if I want to take $25,000, well, that's a pipe dream for New York, but someplace else, is that reasonable? I mean, you're talking a 10 to 20-year window. And just jumping ahead, you've got all these baby boomers who are either being outsourced, bought out, retired, losing the job for one reason or another, who don't have a pension.
Right.
Is this something that you would recommend for them to go into?
Oh yeah, it truly is the investment option for that very person. The person who is losing their job, the person who is needing to create some kind of financial security for themselves. Pensions are no longer really stable any longer. Social Security is not safe. Baby boomers, 95% of the 76 million baby boomers that will be retiring are underprepared for retirement. They are not able to look safely forward into retiring with a lifestyle that they currently have, and they're concerned. Will I be the person who won't be able to retire until I'm 75 because I haven't prepared? Will I be that person who may have to tighten up my belt and my financing because I haven't been prepared. That is a growing concern. It's a real concern for people. And the capacity to use real estate and to use it smartly, to leverage, to understand the taxable benefits is what will continue to drive real estate prices up. It's what will continue to be the investment option for those baby boomers and for Generation X and Generation Y. And international money is coming into the United States because of our lending capacities at rates we have never seen before. So real estate as an investment option is being seen around the globe in the United States as a viable and very solid investment option. But don't be too anxious. I want the investors to know what they strategically need to do to be prepared to hold on to that property, because the markets do change and the markets go in cycles. Many real estate promoters only talk about the up cycle. The down cycle is where brilliance is made. The down cycle of being able to hold on to that property, making sure you know what the name of the game is in the down cycle is what is truly important for the investor.
Because not only is the down cycle so critical, but you hear about foreclosures, and also people are trying to get other people to invest with no money down.
The only time that you really need to do a no money down is when you personally don't have any money to get into the game. Because once you have a property and you've placed it strategically in a market that's going to gain you some appreciation over time, you have equity that you need to account for, which means you need to shift that equity around. You have capital to work with. You want to continue to leverage that capital so you're getting the highest returns on that money. The only people who should be doing a no money down deal are truly the beginner investor who hasn't been in the game. Otherwise, if you're keeping a whole bunch of equity in a property that you have now invested in and you're not moving that or leveraging that, you're getting a very low return, or you're having what I call lazy money. So this is a whole thing that people talk about is no money down, no money down. You're paying a pretty penny for having a property that you have to buy that's going to have a higher interest rate overall and has a pretty lean capacity for you to sustain, because certainly not in New York and not in the California markets and in a lot of Florida markets. You can't buy properties with zero money down without having to make a monthly contribution to keep that property alive. So truly, it's much better to have a little bit of money to work with unless you have no money. If you have no money, go with a zero down. Don't buy in a highly appreciating market yet. You can't sustain it. If you don't have any money down, it typically means you don't have a lot of money to work with. Go place that money in a market that has an easier cash flow, which will mean it's not appreciating at as high of a rate as a Manhattan market or as a New York market or a Los Angeles market. You're going to need to go to a market that's softer, a little easier for you, which brings us back to how do you get started investing in another market?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
How do you? I mean, let's say, what 3 cities would you say for people to look at this point in time?
I get asked that question all the time, and I'm going to bounce back to that. I want the investors to recognize that one city doesn't fit all, and that it's critical that you look at who you are, what your risk tolerance levels are, what's your age, how much extra cash do you have to invest? Do you want a cash flow market which has lower appreciation, or do you want a high appreciation, which means you don't have cash flow? And so that I've worked with 35 to 40 cities all across the country that I have real estate agents in, that I really analyze and look at those properties and help the investor know where they can place that money. There are certain markets that are fabulous for cash flow, and I'm going to say regions, and that would be the southern parts of the country: Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky. All of those regions are tremendously in a fabulous growth capacity right now, and they cash flow. Then you have markets that have had high appreciation. The Florida markets, the Carolinas, you're going to have it in the Georgia market. You're going to have northern parts of New York are showing some great signs of appreciation and growth. And the Colorados are just beginning to take off. Parts of Texas. So what I want the listeners to recognize is that I don't think it's always best to just go to the 3 hot spots, because there are so many investors in the marketplace right now that we're seeing a herd mentality to the hot spots, and I think that that could be problematic for the investor who doesn't understand the economic conditions of supply and demand. And that I'd rather people begin to recognize how to analyze that. The software that you talked about that I have helps people analyze that and helps them go ahead and place that money safely in many, many parts of the country, in many areas all over. So you don't have to go to the hot spot. You have to know which spots will work for you and what you're looking for. And there's a lot of varied places to go.
Do you have a ratio of what people should use for investments?
What we're looking for in investment properties, especially if you're looking at multiple units, those multiple units actually run by themselves, which means they're not looking at you as the buyer of that property. They're looking at that business. They're looking at that building as its capacity to fund itself. And so the lenders are going to be looking at, do you have sufficient down payment, which is standardly 20%, not in a Manhattan market and not in a Los Angeles market, but in almost every other market that's a standard real estate market without huge overappreciation or overvaluing to it. And now they're going to ask you, does that business bring in enough income to make the payments? And they need you to have 20% income over expenses in order for them to fund it. So oftentimes the investor who thinks, I don't have credit, I don't have income, how am I possibly going to get investing in real estate? I say, stay away from the smaller properties. Stay away from the single family residences and the duplexes. The lenders will look at you as an investor when you're there because you have to fund it. Buy properties that are 5 units and above. Buy the bigger properties. They won't look at you as much. They're not even going to make sure that your FICO scores are that high. They want to look at the property. They're going to look at the business. So the shift is away from you and onto your ability to find a property that's smart and good for your portfolio. And that's really what you want anyways.
People have got a lot of equity in their homes. Many people have got them paid off. Do you advise them taking out that equity and start multiplying it in different properties?
Yes, for most people, if it's a very rare thing for somebody to have a property that's all paid off if they don't already have a pension or they don't already have some kind of financial security behind them. If they have paid off that property and they have no other pension fund, they have no other 401s or SEP IRAs, now what they have is they have a whole bunch of their equity, primarily most of their capital, in a non-income producing investment, and the yield is extremely low. And so if you're listening, I'm shifting the conversation from securing your housing to securing your lifestyle and being smart with your capital and your equity based on where you have it invested. It is an old school of thought to pay off the house. It's in a time period when Social Security was present for the American citizens. It's also in a time period when pensions were available. Today, we don't have that security for people. After 1986, with all the tax laws that have changed, the American population has to take care of themselves. Thinking that you want to have no mortgage payment on your house is an old theory, and it's truly a theory that only once you've created financial security for yourself are you able to have the luxury of having no payment on your home. If you do not have your money vested, if you do not have your money working for you, most of the clients that I have may be very rich in equity in their home and living from coupon to coupon because they don't have any money.
One of the things in New York is that if somebody doesn't pay your rent, you can't get them out so quickly. Mm-hmm. Is that true around the country?
In some states. Texas, it's not. In Texas, they can get you out immediately. But most of the states, different states have different policies around that. And you're going to have tenants that are problematic. And you have to recognize that as an owner, you will have, as an investor, you will have problems regarding the tenancy and regarding the properties that you have. The issue is recognizing that, being prepared for the problems that you have, setting yourself up to mitigate that and to be able to prepare yourself for the loss of that income, and to recognize that those problems are what's creating wealth for you. If you didn't have those problems, you wouldn't be on the road and the track to creating financial security for yourself.
How do women invest differently than men?
A lot of women that I work with are actually almost incapacitated by fear. And typically they're incapacitated by fear because they don't know what to do, because they're trying to protect their instinctual need and desire for security and safety, and they don't know what to do. One of the things that I continue to have to work and listen intently on with women is how to give them a step-by-step process, how to help process them through that, and they actually like to invest in collectives. Men, on the other hand, depending on where they're at, are typically much more comfortable with me just saying, this is what you need to do. They go out and do it, but they don't always have the theory behind them, and they're not always aware of the details to the same magnitude that my female investors have. So typically, it's a balance between both of the genders that make for very stabilized portfolios. That's why typically and historically married couples have a more balanced portfolio than some of my singles.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, much more, because you need both the woman who's looking out and kind of putting a little bit of the brakes on it and saying, wait, what about this? What about that? And the man who wants to charge ahead and go conquer and go find the property. Now, again, I'm making very sweeping generalizations. I don't want to offend anybody. I have some women who are absolutely fabulous who go out there and are tremendous and fabulous investors, but there is definitely a part of the population that I have to be very, very aware of, and that distinction, which is the fear factor for women, is much greater than the fear factor with men.
Lisa, this has just been terrific, and I'm upset the show is over.
Yes.
What would you like to leave the audience with?
I want to leave the audience with that time is the most critical factor for investing in real estate. And I want everybody to recognize that you're going to have a lot of fear about getting into the market, and do like I do and invest anyways and get a great team around you so that you can create success for yourself over and over again.
Lisa, thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much. This has just been awesome.
Thank you.
I don't know about you, but while I've been a realtor, I've learned a tremendous amount today, and I hope you have too. If you have any questions for Lisa, she'd be delighted to answer them. So just write us here at the Women's Connection. Hope to hear from you. Bye now.